Welcome everybody to The Big Picture with Arturo Parker. Today, I want to try to provide a big picture perspective on this whole voting ordeal that's going on right now. And I wanted to specifically address this video to people here in this little country called the United States who think that today's election is a really huge deal, and who think that there are enormous stakes for whether it's going to be Trump or whether it's going to be Kamala Harris who's elected. My goal in this video is to try to at least just plant seeds, because when we become so programmed that it's been decades of propaganda washed over us, all you can do, there's no possible way that I'm going to undo that, but I want to just try to do a little bit of deprogramming for those who are, I think, mistakenly under this impression that today is a really, really big deal. It's not. What I want to explain to you is that the most important questions that face the people that live on this globe thing, if we take this to be a representation of our home, the most important questions are not on the ballot. I'm thinking about things such as the genocide that's going on in Palestine. It's not on the ballot. You have no say. I'm talking about the fact that housing has become virtually completely unaffordable for the vast majority of people who live in this country. That's not going to change based on the result of this election. I'm talking about the fact that we have in this country a structural economic dependence upon making war, and that it's been that way for several generations. That is not going to change based on this election. People are under a mistaken impression on both sides. Not right now. People are under this impression on both sides of the political spectrum that the result really matters a lot. But a lot of the sort of supposedly left-leaning peaceniks, and we'll talk about the sort of right-leaning peaceniks in a minute, they seem virtually unaware of the fact that nuclear proliferation actually accelerated during the Biden administration. The amount of funding, the amount of billions of dollars, I think it went from about 43 to 57 billion. That is an enormous increase in the amount of resources as a society here that we are devoting towards producing weapons of mass destruction that just go on top of a huge arsenal that's already capable of completely destroying life on this planet. That was a blue policy. Democrats did that. Okay? Now, both parties are committed to spending over $900 billion in military, or it's we call it defense spending. That's a joke, and it's not a funny one. The military expenditure that year after year after year goes towards producing bombs, weapons, planes to deliver those bombs, missiles, javelins. Do you know how much a javelin costs? Costs about $185,000. These javelin missiles. All of that expenditure, that props up our economy. Neither party is against this. It's important to understand that the military expenditure that we engage in as a country is bipartisan. And it's not up for discussion. It's not within the Overton window to reduce expenditure on these highly technological killing devices. What this means is that if war is hell, and I do believe war is hell, then we have a structural dependence on exporting hell to other places of the world. And that's not going to change at all. For those of you who think that Kamala Harris is the better choice from this perspective, right now, the area of the world where we are dropping the most bombs is this tiny little 22-mile strip of land known as Gaza. It's, there it is. It's right there in this tiny little 22-mile strip of land in Gaza. We have now dropped 350%, so 3.5 times as many bombs, as many explosives as Nazi Germany dropped on London and on England for the entirety of World War II. And we're talking about a 22 strip mile of land that is stateless and defenseless. We have these numbers that are currently repeated as though they're serious numbers that are ranging between about 42,000 and 50,000 that they'll tell you are the number of innocents who've been killed. And in fact, the numbers are much closer to 250,000 at this time. So that's fake news on a mass scale. People don't understand what's actually going on in this area. And Kamala Harris has made it clear that she intends to continue to stand behind, as she puts it, Israel's right to defend itself. That's not defending yourself. That's creating future enemies. If the neighboring country drops so many bombs over your tiny 22-mile strip of land, which happens to be one of the most densely populated pieces of land on the earth, that it's a multiple of what Nazis did in Germany, of what German Nazis did in London, you are going to probably create the conditions for what is known as extremism to bloom. You will not hear anybody anywhere on the American political spectrum, because there's filtration devices that deselect anybody who takes peace seriously. You won't hear anybody ask the question, do Palestinians have a right to defend themselves? But you will hear the supposedly left candidate say that they support Israel's right to defend itself, which is a complete warping of the basic reality. Now, the rest of the world, the rest of the population of the world, represented by the maps behind me, is not confused about this fact. I was in Chile maybe 7 months ago, probably just 4 months into this nightmare, and there were already appearing street murals showing Palestinian children with angels' wings, saying "Free Palestine." The rest of the world is aware of what our country is doing. But through the operation of massive propaganda systems, there's a greatly diminished and repressed consciousness about the basic facts on the ground. And the supposedly left candidate, Kamala Harris, is completely in favor of it, has been complicit with it every step of the way, and even worse, is confusing people about the fact that she's supposedly working against it. You'll hear the phrase working tirelessly. Please. You'll hear this bandied about by people like AOC, by Kamala Harris herself, by the spokespeople for the White House. They'll be saying, we are working tirelessly for a ceasefire. It's really quite simple. Israel is dependent, completely dependent, economically and militarily on the United States. Yes, there are other nations such as the UK and Germany which are involved in supporting this, but 92% of military aid comes from the United States. Their ability to so-called defend themselves by dropping missiles on this completely defenseless, bombs and missiles on this completely defenseless population would crumble if the United States, the executive branch, the commander-in-chief, and the Congress made the decision to stop sending military aid to Israel, which, by the way, is basic U.S. law. You can look into the Leahy law. It's against the law to send military aid to nations that are using that military aid to commit human rights abuses. This is really unfortunate that we're not following our own laws when it comes to this question, because we lose all moral authority in the world. We will not be taken seriously by the community of nations when we stand up and talk about human rights. We will be seen as the monsters who were complicit in one of the worst genocides in human history. That's not on the ballot. Now, let's talk about Donald Trump. What is Donald Trump saying on the right? He's saying, finish the job. What does he mean by that? What is the job? Can we even remember at this point what the supposed goal was? The supposed goal was to recover the hostages that were taken on October 7th. And they talk about defeating Hamas, which is ridiculous, because we've seen in conflict after conflict after conflict that you cannot destroy an idea with weapons. All that you do is create more supporters for violent resistance. Now, by the way, it is permissible under international law to resist occupation by a foreign army. And so, Palestine is perfectly within its rights, or let's just say the Gazans, because Palestine at this point, there's two separate land masses, the West Bank and Gaza, that have been split apart over the course of the last several decades as this expansionist colonial settler project called Israel has grown, taking every possible opportunity to engage in these land grabs and also engaging in this continuous creeping growth. They send settlers to abuse, kill, and take land from people sort of on the borders. So it's this expansionist project. It's been growing for a number of decades. And it's completely dependent on the United States to continue engaging in the project of murderous expansion that is fundamentally based on ethnic cleansing. It's dependent on us, the United States. And there is not a viable presidential candidate who is offering to you and I, the citizens of this country, the choice of getting our hands clean. There is no option. It's not on the ballot. There is no viable option at this time and during the context of this current election for us to cease supporting this monstrous activity. Now, this is, you might think that I'm sort of beating a dead horse talking about this, but this is the most important. If you care about human life, this is the most pressing issue going on anywhere in the world. And every country in the world, people are paying attention to this. And we are turning the Stars and Stripes, the U.S. flag, we are turning it into a symbol of murder and hatred as a result of our involvement in this project. That is how it is seen throughout the rest of the world. I'm not bad-mouthing our flag. I'm telling you the perception that is being created as a result of our actions around the world. And Donald Trump on the right is saying, finish the job. So instead of stopping with 240,000 innocent and largely defenseless Palestinians, kill them all? All 0.23 million? Is that what finish the job means? Now, the fact that we have a structural dependence on sending bombs to be dropped on people around the world has meant that over the decades, we have had this need to get ourselves involved in and then go trying to justify the reason for these foreign conflicts all over the world. There was, after World War II, there was the Korean War. There was Vietnam, as well as Cambodia and Laos. We also had, through the CIA, involvement in overturning militaries and sort of overturning regimes, overturning, in many cases, democratically elected leaders around the world. We say we are the friends of democracy. We say we are a beacon on a hill for the rest of the world to follow. Meanwhile, we have this track record of overthrowing democratically elected leaders around the world, and we have not stopped. We've continued to do this. One of the most recent, a few of the most recent countries where this has happened just in the last few years are Pakistan, Peru, Bolivia, arguably Venezuela. What am I missing? That's just the last few years. There's been over 70 nations where we've done this. And this has been a bipartisan project. Both major political parties have when they've had presidents in office, have engaged in these regime change operations in which they send our weaponry to the political opposition, to the democratically elected president of some nation. So we send these weapons of war so that those who oppose the democratically elected leader can initiate a coup. That policy is not up for discussion. It's not up for debate. How about domestic policy, which is a ridiculous term? It's crazy for us to talk about domestic policy as though it can be separated from what we're doing in the rest of the world, because a lot of what we're doing domestically is producing weaponry which then gets exported to other areas in the world, and it has an economically stimulative effect upon which we rely in order for our economy to continue at full employment. One of the biggest blunders is our healthcare system. Is there a major candidate in either party Is there a viable candidate that you can vote for that is going to bring us into line with the rest of the developed and industrialized world and make it so that you and I all have access to healthcare? No, that's not on the ballot. It's not on the ballot. This is one of the things that I hope I can help people to come to understand, that there is no real left party in the United States. The Democratic Party, within the context of the broader world, within the context of Europe, would be seen anywhere else as a far-right party. They do not support, they oppose, powerfully oppose any and all efforts to try to create an insurance program like that which exists in over 30 other wealthy, developed, industrialized nations around the world, including, by the way, Israel, whom we are sending billions of dollars in aid to. Maybe before we send them these weapons of destruction, before we take on debt that we're still paying the interest on, to send them extra bombs, maybe we could take care of the people right here in our own country. Nope, not even in the Overton window, not even within the range of political possibilities that is treated as serious. Oh no, we can't do that. How would you pay for that? Well, it's very easy actually. Instead of getting ourselves involved with these endless wars, Iraq, Afghanistan, Ukraine, Gaza, instead of sending weaponry around the world, instead of continuing to produce nukes that we hope will never have to be deployed, that we depend on never being deployed, maybe we could just take care of our people. And then healthcare would actually become a great deal cheaper because you're taking out this huge layer of fat of these insurance companies that have no actual role in the provision of services, in the provision of health services. There's an enormous amount of propaganda involved in creating the perception that we are not capable of providing this basic service that is provided by dozens of nations around the world, including one of the nations that we look at as being backwards, one of the nations that is much poorer than we are, Cuba, takes better care of its people in terms of the healthcare outcomes, the provision of basic health services, even in spite of the blockade that we impose on them, the internationally illegal blockade. So it's important for people to understand that just as on the day of the election and in the years before, in the years after, we are more than likely going to continue to be economically dependent on war making around the world. We're going to continue not to provide what are seen as basic services in other areas of the world. In even nations that are still developing, such as Brazil, where healthcare, basic health services, they don't charge you. I was there this February. I went to the hospital. They asked me my name for my passport number. Even as a foreigner, they treated me. They did not ask me how to pay. They did not ask me for my card information. Everything was taken care of by that society. You mean to tell me Brazil can do it, but we can't? Nonsense. So I need to make it understood to the people who are really bent out of shape or worked up about the results of this election, that the major questions are not on the ballot. The major questions have already been decided and are going to continue to be set as long as we are dragged along for this dog and pony show of this major high stakes battle between two essentially far right political candidates. It's all a show. It's all kabuki theater. That's what I would like to be known on Election Day. I'm not saying that you shouldn't vote. There are down ballot races where real important local issues are going to be decided. But on a national scale, we're kidding ourselves. We're kidding ourselves about the idea that these are major high stakes elections. They're not. There's not that much on offer. The most important issues are not on the ballot. You do not have a choice. And maybe once we start to realize that, then maybe we'll start to actually ask for more. Maybe then we'll have an election where real change is on the ballot. Thank you for joining. I'll catch you in the next show.